Happy Wednesday, folks. Welcome to another show. We're going to be talking about some obvious news, the VP pick for the Democratic ticket, and a few other things, but we're going to be addressing a couple of pretty big questions since the election is now kind of like officially underway, the campaign, I should say. So let's get into it. All right. Well, how is everybody doing? I hope you guys are having a good week so far. Mine has been okay, with a couple of exceptions. Anyway, so got a few things I think just to announce, and then we'll get moving. I do apologize for being late. Made an early dinner, did not quite time it right. Took me a while. Some very rubbery chicken and vegetables. Tasted good. Texture was off. Let me say hello to a few people here. Pragmatic Crystal is here. Thank you, Pragmatic Crystal, for the reminders for everyone. Michael Deaton is here. Thank you as well, and good to see you. Barry Shans is here. I live in Minnesota. I'm excited to see what this team can accomplish. I'm interested to see how this one's going to go. I was actually kind of surprised that she picked Tim Walz. I thought she was going to go with I really kind of thought it was going to come down to Shapiro or Buttigieg, more towards Shapiro, but I was wrong. Darth Bounson is here. All they have in this dude is a DUI from 29 years ago. Everything else is just them complaining about their own brain rot. Yeah, kind of. Let's see. Who else is here? Cutlery Duck is here. Good to see you. And I think there'll be more people showing up here. AR is here. Good to see you. Nicole Wilson is here. Hello, hello. Cocos, good evening to you in your home country. Pine Creek Doug over here, like, man, I am really bad at getting the feel of the culture, aren't I? His newest short has is the video footage of some British police arresting a guy for violation of Communication Act 127, or the portion of the Communication Act for basically like malicious comments online or trolling or violent content, something like that. So he's got he's out there trolling for comments. Which one's most likely to bring this kind of dystopia to our shores? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? I'm like, well, given that one of the two actually banned people from coming here just for being of a particular religion, I wonder which one's most likely, given like their their histories. Hey, howdy, Kent Hovens. Hello, Amy. Good to see you. Bellywood is here. Good to see you, bro. Hi, Mr. Fabiano's here. Walz is killing it so far. Yeah, I mean, he was killing it before, and yeah, now he's like officially hit the national stage. So let's see what happens. Howdy, Jefferson. Feeling pretty hopeful about November. I am cautiously optimistic about November. Yeah. Again, remember, I have gone on record in saying that I have a friend / family member who I use as sort of like they're sort of the belt, the barometer I use. And according to him, I'll bring this quote up again. I'll probably use it every time I talk about it. Kamala Harris has this by the ass. His words, not mine. His sentiment, not mine. I don't know. I still think it's going to be a squeaker. So we'll find out. Yeah, balls to the wall. To the walls. Doug is chasing the much desired 4chan MGTOW xenophobia vote. It's working for him too. His subscriber rate is going up. It's steadily climbing there. Liz Allen is here. Good to see you. Also trying to swift boat him about leaving the army prior to the Iraq War, but at the same time, I think it's Trump criticized the same war. Shaking my head. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, so the guy that you said was actually should be more in line with progressives in that he was highly critical of the Iraq War. Walz didn't go to that crap war. He's a coward, even though he had served beyond the point where he could retire. He had more than 20 years in. So, Jefferson, it's been a while, but I bought some Quorum Silver based on conversations you and Maddie were having. My wife approves. I have never actually, totally tangential. Sorry, folks. It's a fragrance thing. I have never actually smelled. Let me take a look at that. And that is from Hewig. Quorum Silver. That is one of their flankers. Yes, I have never had that. I've never smelled that one. I have only ever tried the original formula, the original EDT. But I'm glad it's good. I'm not surprised. I forget who they own now. Who owns one of the big fragrance houses? Anyway, let's not get into that. But yeah, congrats. I'm actually kind of looking at some new ones now as well. I have not, I don't think I've actually purchased anything since the beginning of the year. I picked up some samples for my sisters for I think for like Valentine's Day, just for fun, that something that they could try and hang, and give to friends. Let's see. Michael Deaton says, I think it's going to be a 53 or so to 47 or so blowout. Honestly, I really do. I mean, your mouth to, from your mouth to the universe's ears. Let's see. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out to be a blowout. I think it's more likely that there's going to be a lot of energized Trump types that are going to be coming out, and trying to push back against the rising tide of progressive commie LGBTQishness, whatever. Yeah, the only Q that they like is the QAnon kind. Brian Stevens, Pine Creek is anti-immigration, but Trump said anyone with a bachelor's degree can get in the U.S. Does Doug want a bunch of gender studies people from other countries in the U.S.? I mean, once they all start coming in, then I'll start having to do videos about why they should never have been let in. Sure, yeah. I mean, just changing the rules mid game, typical conservative move. So we're definitely going to win in November. There's no way Trump can win. There's ways he can win. Well, I mean, he does have electoral college paths, unfortunately, to win. But again, I like the sentiment, and so Captain Bone Spurs didn't serve. Walz has cool uncle energy. Yeah, he kind of does, as opposed to the kind of usual creepy uncle energy, which we've had to deal with pretty much since Trump's term. So I think with that, let's see, JC Knott is here, and so is Breeze. Bree is here. I called you Breeze because I started reading your comment. Sorry, Bree. Started reading as Breeze. I wasn't gonna vote or vote third party till Biden drop out. Definitely gonna vote Kamala. Good to hear. Also, if you were considering voting for RFK Jr., the story about the bear body in the back of his car is absolutely hilarious. It's like something out of a movie. It is the craziest thing. I kind of left it there for too long because I went falconing with my friends. It's so random. It's really random and very well worth it. Okay, so let's get into the beef of this. Obviously, the thing is, we've been all talking about it. Walz is in as the VP pick. Things are up and running. Personal side note, because I'm a basic beige Betty, I've already got my sign and my mug. I will have my mug. That's just a thing. I've been doing it every election. I get a mug. So even if they lose, I got two Bernie Sanders ones, and they just remind me, they stink of failure, but I still use them for coffee. Poor Bernie. Anyway, so it's looking pretty good. The media push has been great. So now, with that energy coming out, this segs into the topic at hand. So a fan of the show, I will not name them unless they would like to name themselves. The fan of the show emailed me. We had an email back and forth. And if they want to say who they are in the live chat, they may do so. But I'll keep their name out of it until I see that they're, talking about themselves. They've announced themselves or something like that. But if not, we'll keep it private. But a fan was curious and said they were going to be volunteering for the Harris campaign. And it was the first time volunteering for any campaign. So they generally wanted to know what to expect from volunteering in a campaign. And then the other part of that question that kind of related to that was engaging with conservatives who might be on the fence, or maybe leaning, maybe not quite as hardcore, might be persuadable. How do you go about talking to them? So I suspect that these are interconnected. So I want to put one thing out first as we get into the meat of this. I don't really have a video to cover, so this is going to be a pretty short video, other than saying hi to everybody and having everybody live. What I will do, I'm going to post the link in the live chat. Now, if once I post this, I'm not going to bring in a bunch of people and try to do a live hangout. What I will do is, if you have a question that you want to try to treat it like a call-in show, if you have a question and you want to throw it at me. Definitely do that. I will do my best to answer it, and then you know, then basically kick you out, or we say goodbye. We part as friends. But once that's done, somebody wants to bring something live, if that happens. If you're not interested in being on live, you don't want to show your face. You don't have to show your face. First of all, I'm not Doug from Pine Creek. It's not a thing, and I think he backed off that. But also, just kind of limited to like one question. That's sort of the thing that I'm looking for. Don't feel pressured at all to think that you have to do it. If you want to just leave it in the chat at me, and I will try to address it as quickly as I can. So let's try to get into sort of the meat of this. The general point that I think needs to be made going into this kind of thing is I'll talk about the campaign thing. So my own brief history with this, I've campaigned, I've volunteered for, I guess technically 3 campaigns. Obama's first term, I believe I signed up for one of Sanders' primary campaigns, and Biden's, and the one that he won in 2020, I think. Of the one that I did for Biden, because COVID was kind of kicking up and other stuff like that, I really didn't get that far. Actually, I think I started doing some initial stuff in like 2019. I basically just did online kind of stuff that actually kind of alienated people. It was sort of like, hey, spread the word via text and things like that through your contacts or whatever. I made the mistake of doing that. That actually ticked off quite a few people. I found out real fast that some of the people that I had known and worked with were seriously conservative. So that wasn't all that great, but given that time, that was as much as I had to offer to it. The one time that I did really get into it was in the 2008 campaign for Obama, and I did canvassing. And so for the individual that is interested in this, the question that came up was, what to expect. Generally, when you go into it, you'll end up getting some kind of orientation, which is good. If it's an okay campaign, they'll probably give you some instructions and kind of send you on your way. It'll feel a little messed up. It'll feel a little chaotic. If it's a well-run campaign, they'll probably have an orientation thing. They'll pair you up with somebody who has volunteered before. You won't be going out like a babe in the woods. You'll have a route. You'll have materials. You'll get some basic instructions. If it's a very well-run campaign, you will probably be paired off with other first-time volunteers and taken through an orientation where they might do a little role playing and things like that. Generally, what they'll usually end up doing is try to emphasize the few things that I'm going to emphasize here. As a campaigner going out and canvassing, the biggest message that you are sharing is the fact that you are volunteering your time to go door to door and campaign, or do the phone call canvassing, or whatever it is they've got you doing. That alone does a lot, especially if it's the door to door thing, because people obviously can see you. You're out walking around. You're not being paid. You believe in the candidate enough to do this. You are a voter and a volunteer. You are not the candidate. So you're not expected to put on any kind of speeches or engage in any kind of debates. If the organizers and the instructors for the campaign know what they're talking about and know what they're doing, they will explicitly tell you how to get out of those situations, because the last thing they want to happen is for a civilian, a citizen, to have a bad encounter with one of the volunteers. They don't want that to happen. So generally, what will happen is you will be given the materials that you're going to hand out, pamphlets, flyers, posters, whatever. Could be a combination of things, whatever. And you'll be encouraged to leave those at the place. If somebody gets a little bit pugnacious with you, a little testy, a little cranky, then they might take you through a little bit of a role play to kind of diffuse it. Generally, what they'll want you to do is get out of there as quickly as possible. Leave them with the information if they'll take it. Wish them a good day. Don't take up too much of their time. Move on to the next house. Again, you're not going to be given stump speeches. Your job's not to win the thing for them. It's just to get information out, get the vote out, get people interested, put in that appearance. And that's really about it. If If you want to know, if you want a little bit of extra information, generally, if somebody asks you a personal question, why are you specifically voting for Harris Walz? One of the best things that you can do is to point them back to the documents that you're giving them to keep it on message. You don't have to worry if you're worried about message discipline, wording, getting something wrong, putting the wrong foot forward, presenting things in the wrong way. Always remember the talking points are in the documents they gave you to give out to members of the community. That's the whole point. Or it's in the script on the telephone thing that you're doing, or it's part of the script if you're doing some kind of email outreach or anything like that. You always refer to that. That is message discipline. That is how you stay on task. You want to stay over the target. So anytime somebody makes it personal and wants to know why you're doing it, you can do the kind of corporate thing and just redirect their attention back, like, well, it's actually right here in the pamphlet. Take a look at it. Most of the things being discussed here are some of the reasons why, and more, why I'm voting for the, Harris Walz ticket in this case. It could be anyone. You can do the same thing if you're doing the Trump Vance thing. The other thing on the other side too is to understand, if you want a little bit extra, find one of the talking points that's in there and find a personal example for yourself. So if you do end up in a situation where you have the time, and this is a good one to use, not so much when you're doing the campaign walk and talk, but more afterward. If somebody's asking you in your downtime, what out of that, PR speech do you agree with? Find the one that you relate to and give it, and maybe have an example for, and put that one forward. That's usually the best way to do it, because that gives people something they know at that point you've thought about something. It's not, you're not just listening to advertising and like, well, between the two of these people, I'd like to have a beer with, candidate B. That's not what you're doing. You're like, they mentioned this situation. It sounds like they feel strongly about it. They've said what they wanted to do about it. I agree with it because X happened to me, or X happened to my wife, or X happened to my family member, insert, whoever. That's probably the best way to go about doing that. So that's how I would go with that. So that kind of brings up canvassing. What to expect? You're probably gonna be a little bit bored, a little bit frustrated, a lot anxious, and very confused. If you're working with a good campaign, most of that stuff will go away, and it will dwindle down to hopefully a slight sense of accomplishment. You know, maybe the terror will still be there. But if they can reduce it to the point where you're simply bored, you're in a well-oiled machine. That's good. If you're not enthusiastic or you're not super excited about it, none of that's important. This is ground game 101 stuff. Your job is to basically to spread this information, get it out there, put it in an appearance, and move on. Cover as many houses as you can, make as many phone calls as you can. That's the name of the game. You just sort of like eat your own pride and do it. If you don't like it, then do not do more of it. But if you're not giddy about it or super pumped about it, don't necessarily think that's because something's going wrong or it's necessarily a wrong fit for you. If the campaign is so well run that during the course of your normal campaigning things, you're actually kind of bored, that means that they've got things buttoned up so well you don't really have to do any thinking if you don't want to. But if you do want to engage, hopefully they've got avenues for you to do that. So those are some things to look out for. In my experience, the 2008 Obama campaign was great. And I was spoiled. It was my first one. They were extremely well organized at every level. The training was great. You didn't have to think about anything if you didn't want to. But the people that I've got teamed up with people who had volunteered in Democratic campaigns, 4 or 5 times before. It was a great learning experience. When I stepped into a local thing for one of Bernie Sanders' primary campaigns, it was going to be canvassing or phone calls. It was amazingly messed up. I mean, it wasn't bad. The people there were nice. It was welcoming and everything, but it was a lot more disorganized. And I ended up walking out of it thinking, what they wanted to do, I didn't have time to do. It conflicted with my work schedule anyway, so I wasn't able to volunteer more than that initial weekend kind of orientation meeting. Which kind of bummed me out. But by the time the meeting was over and I talked with people and tried to ask questions about how they were organizing things, I was surprised at how disorganized they still were. And so, not surprising, they didn't do that great. And again, the last time I did any volunteering, that was just to do online texting kind of stuff with I think it was the Biden campaign. I don't think it was Maria or I think it, Maria, I'm blanking on it, Hillary Clinton. I don't think I did any kind of volunteering in any way, shape, or form for hers because I was at that one. I was pushing for Bernie Sanders to win in the primary. So, with that being said, that kind of covers it. Unless anybody's got any specific questions, let me get in here. Uh, yeah, Jason, what's the StreamYard link for asking questions? Yeah, if you've got like a specific question you want to come in and ask me live. If you don't want to come in and ask me live, just throw it in the chat. Now, I'll answer it there. Maya Atkinson is here. Good to see you, Maya. Hello, hello. AL Trucker is here. Good to see you. Let's see. The game is here. All right. Okay. That's rule number one from my book: how to start a fight while canvassing for a candidate during election. See, that's make sure to tell every MAGA you mean that when we win, they're going to finally get the free education they were denied, and civics, logic, and English comp classes will be mandatory to graduate. Yeah, maybe leave that part out unless you are looking, depending on the state that you're in. If you're telling that to like some kind of some people in Vermont, they'll probably get a giggle out of it. But if you tell that to some MAGA people in say rural southern Michigan, rural northern Michigan, yeah, don't do that. Not unless you've got a fast ride out of there. Yeah, Rock Josiah, glad to see you. Glad you could join one live. So the thing that I wanted to get into, and I had some notes that I took on this one, was the connected to this kind of thing is the idea. How do you go about talking to people who are kind of on the fence? And I don't know. I'm probably not the best one to ask about this, at least in terms of like I think my content probably alienates people who are on the right. But then again, I'm kind of doing that anyway, just because I'm explaining. And I'll get into what that usually means. Generally speaking, I don't know that there's a lot of different ways to kind of convince people of your positions, but it takes an enormous amount of time. I don't think that there's ever been kind of a secret weapon that's going to like pull a person from being right wing to left wing automatically. Mostly because a lot of people don't know that they're right wing or left wing. They really don't. They have no idea. They kind of have an emotional connection to certain things they identify with in terms of politicians and TV ads, but not theory, not even just general kind of political theory. They might understand the distinctions that Americans make about liberal versus conservative. It's very unlikely that they are going to know the distinction between left and conservative, left and right. They're not going to know the difference. They're probably not going to know the difference between, like, say, when we say neoconservative, that's neoliberal everywhere else. And when we say liberal here, we kind of conservatives mean it's the flaky hippie types that want free education and free everything and want to tax the rich. And liberal everywhere else in the world means basically just everything short of being a Nazi. So, political communication and terminology can get really complicated that way. The thing that I have noticed that has always been the most persuasive, depending on the people that you end up talking to, try to figure out what it is that they like. If their major concern is money, then try to figure out how you can talk to them about economics and stuff, especially if they're constantly coming at things from the perspective of, well, we need to go back to the gold standard. We need to do what Reagan did. We need to do what Thatcher did. Maybe look into that if you're interested. If you're not, then don't engage. But if you are, maybe check into that. That's usually the fastest way to deal with somebody. Rather than, like, if somebody wants to talk to you about, like, look, I don't care about like LGBTQ issues or culture war issues. What I want is to make sure that the US currency is as strong as it can be. And that's why I vote for Republicans. Okay. Look into that and find out if are Republicans and conservatives traditionally really strong on that. They're not. Democrats are also kind of weak on that, but it just depends on what era that you're hitting. But there's a lot to learn there. If it is culture war stuff, and most of us get sucked into the culture war stuff just by virtue of identifying as a Democrat, a Republican, a conservative, whatever, then kind of know your positions as best you can. And like I said, try to keep it, make your examples personal. If you end up engaging, kind of like the comments that I've got a new short out with Donald Trump walking slowly down a ramp that has attracted an enormous amount of MAGA bros, and it's just it's a prime example of some of the just horrible commentary that you get in social media circles. And I've been actively engaging with it in an incredibly immature and petty way, mostly because I'm trying to meet those responders at their level. They're not bringing an A game. I think it is their A game, but it is not a game, if you know what I mean. um, there's really nothing that you can do in that space that's going to be all that persuasive, especially when you start out with something like I did, which is a video trolling an older candidate, former president, who is typically making fun of other people for their shortcomings, their physical shortcomings, their physical appearance, their whatever. And he's engaging in one right there. And it's like, okay, so it's hands off this guy when he's acting like a complete stranger, but he can make fun of somebody for being fat or bald or too hairy or mentally handicapped. I mean, he made fun of somebody for having Parkinson's. And if you try to say that he didn't, you're a rube. I mean, the one that's currently going on, people are actively on there saying, well, no, it rained that day and he was wearing slippery dress shoes. It did not rain the day that he walked on that ramp. And we don't have any idea what kinds of soles were on the dress shoes he was wearing that day. People are just making excuses. They don't know that, but they're saying it to me and others in my live chat anyway. Those conversations are essentially hopeless. They basically exist as just, that's a food fight. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just noise on the internet. In terms of actually having a conversation, the best way that you can do that, have a conversation with somebody one-on-one, keep it as friendly as possible. More than likely what you will find out from a conservative is that they're usually, this is my only help that I can give. A lot of conservatives or people leaning conservative tend to lead with their feelings first in a conversation. And the two feelings they bring up, the first one is disgust, and the second one is anger. Anger/fear. Those are a close second. They're second and third, and they're usually tied for second. Number one is disgust, always. They don't like the look of a person. They don't like the sound of a person. They don't like the seemingness of a person. These will all get brought up. They don't like Kamala Harris because she seems wrong. You could jump in and be like, okay, is that because you're a racist and you just don't like, people with darker complexions? And they could be, no, that's not it at all. They actually probably do not have a good handle on why they feel the way they feel about some of the people that they have they are experiencing genuine disgust. They probably cannot tell you why. So the best thing to do is to try to get into a realm of ideas, try to get them away from talking about personalities and talk about not policy per se, because that can get kind of wonky, but just talking about priorities. What do we want to do? What do you think a government's for? If a sheriff came into your town and said the biggest problem with cops is that they exist, vote for me to be your sheriff and pay me, and I'll make sure that the cops never do their job again. I know that sounds a little absurd, but there actively are conservatives and capital L libertarians that run on this. They run on the side. The best thing to do for society is for government to get out of the way, and then the economy will do what it does, and everything will just sort of like flush itself out the way it's supposed to go. It's complete magical thinking, and it's never been shown to work, but they're convinced that the only thing we have to do is just get rid of government completely, and then it'll be fine. It won't. And a lot of people probably don't agree with that if you talk to them about it. If you yank government away, where does a kid go to school? Who's running the fire department? Who's taking care of infrastructure? Fabio's on here. I'd like to know from you if Brandolini's law applied to Trump campaign is taken into consideration by the opposite party, and if it could actually be completely ignored. Brandolini's law? I've got to refresh myself with that one. I don't. The bullshit asymmetry principle. Emphasizes the effort of debunking misinformation in comparison to the relative ease of creating it in the first place. That's generally where this is a good question. This is why I think the media is fascinated with the fact that Walz and other Democrats have done this weird thing. They're just describing the sort of hardcore right, especially the culture war right wingers, as weird. Like, okay, you want the government to put itself in a place of just insisting that women are breeders. That's fucking weird. That's a strange thing to want. This is better than what they normally do. Because of that particular Brandolini's law, somebody could basically gish gallop an enormous number of absolutely absurd things, do it in a way that sounds like some of them, maybe even all of them, are based in some kind of principled idea or policy theory. And then it's up to the other person to go through and slowly dissect it and say, no, this doesn't work for points A through Z. And then this point doesn't work for points A through Z, and try to dissect it that way. While they're working on that, the other person that gish galloped all the bullshit is just standing there looking. I'm like, and then looking to the audience like, a round of applause, please. I told you they were a nerd, and here they go. To whereas with this one, the Republicans and conservatives had gotten so pithy in their ability to knock people down and talk about like, oh, well, you're a communist, or you're woke, or you're DEI, or you're this. And now Dems have been like, yeah, you're a freak. What did you say you wanted to do again? You want to eliminate taxes for people with kids, but people without kids would pay more. So what does that mean for the single moms that you talk about with all the kids they had to be freeloaders so they could get all those government bennies? Like, do they continue to get, is that something that you're backing now? Like, and then when they like, no, I don't think you understand no, I do understand what you mean. I understand that you're a fucking weirdo. You're not thinking about this. You're throwing out some weird idea and thinking it's going to like grab, this is going to somehow like tickle the imaginations of a bunch of like-minded freaks who are going to hit your, select your name so that they can get this kind of pervert, greasy, weirdo kingdom that they think is going to like roll in some age of innovation and unchecked prosperity without giving any reasons or any kind of justification as to how that's going to happen. So yeah, the idea that now that this idea has popped up where it's like, okay, yeah, you're you want to ban pornography. What do you mean by pornography? Anything that talks about LGBTQ people. Okay, that's freak shit. What the hell is your problem? How far back do we go when we're talking about that? If somebody takes issue with David's special friend in the Old Testament or the apostle that loved Jesus extra much, do we just default to that might be porn, therefore cut that out? I don't think they would like people bringing this up, but that is precisely what they're going to invite into the world. That's weird. And it's an enormous waste of time. And at the same time, if you look at this kind of stuff when they're discussing this kind of stuff, and this becomes important when they're doing this, recognizing the contradictions when you're talking to somebody who's on the other side is really important, because the one thing they'll say is like, look, I just want to keep more of my own money. Okay. What makes you think it was yours to begin with? You can get into like economic things with that going forward. Another one, I don't want the administrative state telling me what to do. Okay, so you're going to vote for Trump and the Republican Party, who are actively looking to set up an administrative state that will prevent people from using words like anything involving LGBTQ people. You need an administrative state to enforce that aspect of the administrative state, but you don't want the administrative state. Like, how many contradictions are already apparent in what they're doing? Pointing that kind of stuff out and pointing out how fucking weird it is, pointing out how goddamn pointless it is and expensive it is. You want me to vote for you and pay you to do this job, where instead of making sure my kids get a good education and the country runs well and we have clean water and air and decent services, you are going to go after the woke? That's what I'm going to be spending money on. There are people who are voting for Trump specifically because they want that. But they are a minority, and hopefully they are a shrinking minority, because Trump is not going to be able to get a lot of this to work without it going horribly wrong. Horribly wrong. So school lunch good? Good. Can't talk to people on the other side, just berate and clown them. Not entirely true. I do agree with certain people that is the case. And if you are online, like I said, it's largely a food fight. There's not much that you can do online. Doug is a great case for this. He claims that he's willing to listen. All evidence to the contrary, right? It's obvious that he takes in information. He takes in enough information from people that he disagrees with enough to try to utilize it against them later. He wants to be able to get ammunition to hold against them. He's not interested in an exchange of ideas. Well, less so. I think he's interested in an exchange of ideas if he's talking to someone like Jim Bob or Andrew Wilson. Maybe he's not as culturally conservative as they are, but he's more likely to be. He's certainly not going to like see eye to eye or try to meet me in the middle on some of my social issues. So there you go. So I hope that takes care of at least the first part of that. Just to recap, as far as the election volunteering goes, have fun as best you can. And hopefully whatever branch that you're with is well organized. They know what they're doing and you have a good time doing it and you'll learn a lot. Don't worry about having to be an apologist for Kamala Harris and Walz. It's not your job. They don't expect you to do that. In fact, the opposite expectation is true. They will not want you doing that. All they want you to do is be enthusiastic about who you're voting for, pass on the information, and basically just to be a friendly face and to spread that information. You're not there to pick fights, convince people, or win debates. So take that pressure right off you. It doesn't do anybody any good to walk into that. That's Harris's job. That's Walz's job. That's their campaigner's job. They have to figure out how to win the election. You are volunteering to get information out to drive up the vote, which ultimately does win the election, but you're not doing it necessarily rhetorically. You will have the equipment and the paperwork and the talking points in the documents that they give you to spread that around. It should work out without a problem. As far as being able to talk to people during or after, while you're campaigning, try not to bring it up. Try not to get into those debates. Do whatever you can to just sort of like disengage from that. Check yourself out of that personally. I hate to use his words, but try to be a little bit dead inside. No, that's terrible advice. Don't be dead inside. Just don't take anybody's bait. The one thing that can happen, depending on the area that you're at, is somebody asks you a personal question like that because they want to see a campaigner get upset, especially if they can video it. Don't do that. If you do have anything to be nervous about, that's it. So don't volunteer anything if you don't have to. Always refer back to the documents. You'll be fine. And you'll probably be with experienced people anyway. They'll probably have a pretty good idea of what to do. If they blow up or lose their shit, well, that could get fun. Make sure you have your camera ready just in case. The internet might need it for context. But for the broader picture of talking to conservatives, I'll point this out. I think if you go and look up books on how to figure out what one side of the political philosophical aisle is thinking versus the other, you are going to find that there's a lot more ink spilt from liberals or leftists trying to figure out the origins of right-wing political ideology and the origins of some of the attitudes in conservative communities, especially if they're not well informed. I'm thinking of like the reactionary books like The Reactionary Mind and things like that. You won't see this from the other side as much. There's a few, but oftentimes, and I've read them, that's one of the reasons why I switched from being a conservative. One of the many motivators was that I would read these books and the conservatives would talk about the left-wingers and the liberals as if they were a subspecies of animals, unironically. And you would read the leftist account or the liberal account, and they'd be genuinely concerned about how to be understood by conservatives. And that was a huge eye-opening moment for me. That there a lot of these books, some of the leftists and the liberals could be crass, they could be condescending, but there always was a moment or several moments they were genuinely interested in trying to be comprehended by their right-wing opponents. And almost all of the right-wing information that I read, they had zero interest in being understood. Their primary interest was in projecting that they were correct, projecting strength, and making the other side look weak and foolish. That was it. And when anybody brought up like, well, wait, maybe they have a point about this. What about that point there? That might not be a bad idea. Oftentimes it was dismissed in conservative circles because you were cozying up to the enemy. There's a massive disparity between how these two groups, how they treat each other. I'm happy to see that in terms of political fighting, that Democrats at an actual national level are using some of the things that they've learned from like Gen Z and to some extent Gen X and millennials against Republicans, because for the longest time there was always the Republicans calling the Democrats nerds and virgins, and the liberals coming back and pushing up their glasses and getting into a semantic debate about what those words meant. That was the central stereotype. You can't have much going, you can't really have a dialectic between those two groups. One, they're exaggerations, they're caricatures, but they carried an enormous amount of weight. Want a great example of how this plays out? Try to find a rerun of maybe late season Murphy Brown. Terrible. Try to take a look at that, and that'll give you kind of an idea of the sort of exaggerated weirdness of conservative versus liberals in the 90s. But yeah, I don't think that there's not too much of an emphasis. Again, it depends on who you're talking to, and it depends on why you're talking to them, and it depends on what function. But for the purposes of this video, if you're concerned that you can't convince a conservative or someone who's leaning conservative or somebody on the fence, that should not in any way affect whether or not you think that you can successfully volunteer for a campaign, because your ability to do that does not have any bearing on your ability to do the volunteering part. In fact, you should not mix the two. Your job will be as a foot soldier to take orders. That's it. So with that being said, I think that about wraps it up. And special thanks to the fan. I didn't mention their name because, like I said, I wasn't sure if it was okay. But I did want to address this. We went back and forth on this a little bit. I hope that this kind of like does their questions justice as far as the email goes. If they do have any questions, please email me back and let me know if I whiffed on something, didn't get something right, or maybe misunderstood where you were going with it. But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of those issues. So, and it's been almost 45 minutes, so I think I've rambled enough. With that being said, I think I'm going to get out of here and wrap this up. Keep it a little on the short-ish side. Good to see you, Scott Duke. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you. And yeah, just sound bites and little substance. I said, okay, now, but isn't primarily, and I'm not saying it's the case, addressing the others is weird, is basically doing the same thing that Trump has been doing for years, just sound bites and a little substance. Yeah, but I think if there is something to be said about that, right? Because if the other side is only giving you a sound bite and distilling their message down to just belittling and insulting the other person, and the other person is desperately trying to turn that, flip that and turn it into something of substance, you're not going to get anywhere. Not only are they going to disregard it, but they're going to treat it with contempt. So it is sort of like a turnabout, kind of thing. It might seem like it's basically just both sides are racing to the bottom. But at the same time, engaging with somebody in these kinds of tactics, I think it's important to realize most of the people that are coming up with right-wing attacks are doing it because they know that it's going to play this way in the media, on TV, etc. They are not interested in a discussion. They are interested in message transmission and message discipline. The idea that Democrats have long surrendered to whatever narrative is implied by Republican talking points and banter and insults. And that's been their weakness. Now they're just like, no, they're taking their own, calling them freaks, sticking with that, and that's their message discipline. In terms of dealing with campaigning, this is very effective because, one, it does two things. It quickly provides voters a glimpse as to what they're voting for. If you have one group say something horrific, absurd, and strange, conservatives, and then have Democrats come in and try to nuance an explanation through everything in those statements that the conservatives just established as narrative, what's the thing the average person just took away from that? The Democrats conceded that narrative is in fact in play. If it's a campaign, you do not do that. You do not concede the narrative to your opponent, ever. ever. And Democrats and liberals have been doing this all the time. This is why they usually lose. If you are in campaign mode, you need to transmit a message and you need to stay disciplined. If you're going to get into a venue where you're going to have those kinds of conversations, or you're going to have a longer form discussion about some of these issues one at a time, then do that. But that won't work if conservative candidates bring that same attitude that they use in their ads and on social media into the debate sphere and treat their debate opponent the exact same way. I'll just throw talking points at them, message transmission, message discipline, narrative transmission. Now, deal with the reality I've just created for you and for this audience, liberal. And then the liberal is under the, oh, but if this, then that, then this, then that, and everyone else, everybody just gets glassy-eyed. It's a way of asserting control in that narrative. Do not fall for that shit. It's refreshing to see that they're not. So yeah, I would say it would be nice if you could see both sides behaving maturely and trying to have a discussion for discussion's sake and trying to genuinely understand the nuances of each other's points. But that's not where we are. And during a campaign, that's not where any of them live or work at this point. That's not their job. Their job is to present the case for why they're the better choice than the other person. Message discipline and message transmission. So with that being said, I think I will wrap it up there. So coach versus couch. Yeah. Shanna was there last night. Oh, very cool. Oh, that's cool. I wonder what did she say about it? A lot of energy there. I've seen video of it, and I've been kind of surprised. The vibe kind of feels like it may have even beat some of Bernie Sanders' more excited rallies. It's been pretty cool. All right, folks, I'm going to get out of here. So I hope that settles some things. If you have questions, concerns, hate, whatever, email me at jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. You can find me on social media over on TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, or X if you're nasty. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you've got any ideas or questions or anything about this. Special thanks to the fan who brought this issue up to me. I'm glad I could make this video for them. For them specifically, not only a special thanks, but a special request. Please let me know if I missed anything. If you have any further questions, if you want, reach me again, jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Before I leave, I'll answer this one. Jail Warren asked, quick question. How are you feeling overall about the Dem ticket? Pretty good. Pretty good. I genuinely thought that the VP ticket was going to, I thought that the choices were going to come down to Pete Buttigieg and Josh Shapiro. I'm surprised that she went with Walz. I'm not as excited about Walz as others, but I prefer Walz definitely over Mark Kelly. There was a problem dealing with him being anti-labor. Josh Shapiro, there were issues with his stance on, really about his support or prior support to IDF. I don't think it was that bad, but it was potentially a little tricky. And with the things that are happening in the Middle East now, trying to thread that needle and bringing that into the campaign probably would have been a weak one. I don't think Walz gives them any kind of traditional swing state advantage in the way, it will probably lock things up for Minnesota. Not that Minnesota's that big a deal, and I think she probably could have won it on her own or with another candidate. At the same time, though, I think that Pennsylvania would have been just as vulnerable to a Trump win if she'd picked Josh Shapiro. So I'm good with it. And I do like Walz's politics. I genuinely like them better. I'm actually surprised that the ticket consists of two people who are this ideologically close to my positions. This is a first for me. Usually it's been more hold your nose and just deal with the fact that they're not, a freak shit conservative that wants to, enact Gilead from Handmaid's Tale, make it reality. Maudie says she was blown away. Well, that's very cool. Yeah. I'm really surprised at the reactions from people that are coming away from these things, the reactions from people that are adjacent to these things, talking to people who have just been in them and just kind of picking up the afterglow after the fact has been really surprising. So stuff like that makes me think that if that enthusiasm continues, Michael Deaton's prediction might be right on those numbers. But then again, we do have to deal with an electoral college. So fingers crossed. Let's hope that Trump loses. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what I want. But I am excited now because I genuinely want Harris and Walz to win. And I want my mug. I want my new mug. I'm petty like that. Sorry. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. I'm glad Shapiro's on the ground in Pennsylvania instead of being distracted by a VP campaign. Yeah, and I heard his speech for them at the campaign was phenomenal. I haven't watched it all yet. I need to sit down and watch it. But yeah, I've heard it was really good. So, all right, folks. Well, I hope you all have a great night. I am going to try to get back here another time before the weekend hits, if I get the time. Any ideas or anything like that, or suggestions, video clips, anything, recipes, jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. All right, folks. I'll catch you later. Take care.